What's up, everybody? Welcome on Into One Soccer today. Andy Petrillo, Oliver Platt, Gareth Wheeler with you. How's everybody doing? We feeling good? We feeling good today?
Feeling great. A little bit frosty. It's a little bit cool and brisk. I'm like keeping my fingers crossed for this like CONCACAF Champions Cup tie in Hamilton, Ontario upcoming, that the weather kind of starts heating up.
Cold.
There's ice and snow in New Orleans. There's snow on the beach in Florida right now. We're just
dude, this is a polar vortex. Polar vortex. It's the cheeks instantly freeze. I took the dogs for a walk the other day, went to say something, took a big gulp of cold air and choked. Like, that's it. You can't run in this, Ollie. The players can't play in this.
To breathe kind of air.
Yeah.
I had it going to do my groceries.
Yeah.
It's the frozen running snot season. I think, what did we call it early in the week?
Is that what you called it?
Face in your beard. In your beard.
Well, thankfully, I don't have to worry about that just yet. The older I get, maybe I'll grow a mustache. We don't know these things. It was a little
November's
chilly.
upcoming.
It was a little chilly, but it wasn't as bad. Liverpool, Lille taking each other on here. Champions League action, guys. Let's get to it. Jonathan David's Lille side falls 2-1 to Liverpool. Jonathan David, the Canadian, the lone goal scorer for Lille, by the way, gets that goal when Lille already went down to 10 men. So it's a very simple question here, Ollie. What did you think of David's performance?
I thought he played well. I think there's two key incidents in the game, so I guess it makes sense to kind of go over those that David was involved in. The first one, obviously, is Liverpool's first goal, and scored by Mo Salah, where David loses the ball. And I saw him get a little bit of criticism for this and for that moment in the first half. When I watched that back, I don't think that was his fault, to be honest with you. Could he have made a better decision in the moment? Yeah, because a better decision would have been punting the ball into Rosette, obviously, than the turnover in that area of the pitch. But when you actually look at it back, David does well to win the ball on the touchline, turns in fields, his team's in a really good situation, and then the players around him are just so static. There's one player in particular, Baka, who doesn't move and basically gets in his way. So for me, that was more to do with poor movement and no real options for him to play into after he'd done pretty well than it was David's own fault. And then you look at the real highlight of the game for him, which was the goal. And I think this says a lot about the type of player he is and the level I think he's ascended to as a player, that against probably the best team in the world right now, when chances are few and far between, this was really the only good chance he got all game long. He has the maturity and the poise and the patience and the instincts and all of the rest of it to bury that chance and to get his team level with 10 men. So overall, I thought Lille, put in a pretty spirited effort, particularly going down to 10 men, but at the start of the game before the first goal as well. And Jonathan David gets another goal against a massive opponent to add to his resume.
What do you think, Wheels?
I think that the goal is really the only thing that matters in the end, because this is where the hype train picks up. This is what I was just looking at some of the headlines coming out of that match from the UK. Just a simple Google search will do it for you. He's already being linked to Spurs. Liverpool fans are having their say whether he's a fit. Newcastle, West Ham, Manchester United. Once you score on this stage, and you have a record of scoring not only against Liverpool, but Atletico Madrid, Juventus, Real Madrid in this competition, he's up to 5. He's just a couple goals back of Robert Lewandowski for the lead in that category. He's amongst the biggest names in terms of attacking talent in European football in terms of his goal-scoring prowess this season. And he's available on a free in the summer. All of these factors are going to really create this little bit of a feverish storm around his name, and player or teams and their fans and journalists pondering where he might land. This is all good business for Jonathan David and his agent. And that's the biggest thing. He doesn't fall flat on his face. He scores at Anfield, he scores against another big club. All in all, a great night, and the buzz will continue surrounding Jonathan David.
Yeah, you can go and analyze that game, I think, is, what a lot of people did. And even Ollie, you look back, he was on the attack, loses the ball, goes the other way. Liverpool scores, second Liverpool goal, off a set piece, off David's head to the foot of a Liverpool player. They score. You look at that, but you're right. He scores, and he does start to maintain his composure as well. And even at halftime, listening to some of the pundits, they all said he looked a little nervous because, to your point, Wheels, Liverpool has been one of those teams rumored to be interested in him. every player, even though he's called the Iceman, I don't care what anybody says. Sometimes you can get a little bit nervous when you know that maybe you're taking on a team that could be interested in you. So you're kind of auditioning there a little bit too. Maybe it got to him, but at the end of the day, he did what he's known to do, and that is score. So I think we're kind of the belief, and I don't know, Wheels, if you want to disagree or maybe you agree, like, we don't think he's going to go in this window. It seems like the contract's going to go with Lille and then he's going to move on, and we're trying to figure out where he's going to end up. Where do you think is actually the right fit for him after Lille? Like, is it Liverpool? Is it the Premier League? Where do you think best suits Jonathan David?
It would be hard to turn down a club. And I did say this about Alphonso Davies in our discussion about him yesterday. When clubs like Real Madrid, Liverpool, Manchester United, Barcelona come knocking at your door, it's very difficult to turn down that type of scenario. And I include Manchester United in that mix, fully aware of where they stand right now, which is nowhere near the three other aforementioned clubs. I just think that he needs to go to a place where he's going to play. I think that is priority here. What club is going to provide him opportunity to get on the field and continue to play the way that he has? I mean, the tape is there to see. He's a legend at Lille. He's a record-setting player. I think that everyone knows what he's all about. I think that there will be some clubs that doubt a little bit, maybe his size, maybe his physique when it comes to the Premier League, whether he will be a locked-on fit. I, for one, think that he would suit the Premier League just based upon his versatility. I think he moves really well. He can press, and that's becoming more and more of greater importance in the Premier League and beyond. So I do think that there's a fit there. I'm looking at clubs maybe below the rung of Liverpool and Man City and clubs like that. I'm kind of looking at clubs like Aston Villa. I'm really interested what Aston Villa might do with John Duran. I mean, the Colombian's a phenomenal player. A little bit more of an X factor. I'm not sure if he's going to be reliable. He's going to be there long term. They might want to fill that role with a Jonathan David type player. I think Spurs is also a club where he can really thrive in that attack-based system. But what's gone on with that club in the Premier League and the future of their manager is very much up in the air. I think that Newcastle, they're going to need a player behind Alexander Isak. They're a club on the rise. No Champions League football this year, but they certainly have eyes for European football next year. Those are three clubs that I think that might not be right at the top, on the top shelf in terms of clubs in their stature, but three very good clubs who are in really solid, or could be in really solid positions depending on the decisions that they make. So if you're looking at the Premier League specifically, those are three clubs that I think that there's actually a fit.
All right. Where do you think he should end up, Ollie?
I agree that he should consider those types of clubs seriously, and I think he will. I don't think that it's necessarily a foregone conclusion that this has to be one of the absolute elite clubs. If he's going to go to one of those elite teams, I said it before, I think Liverpool is a tremendous fit for him, and just the way he plays. When you look at, the way Luis Diaz has been playing as a centre forward for them this season, but very much not the classic striker. He'll come off the front, he'll connect, play in the channels. That to me is Jonathan David. That tactically would be an ideal fit for him. And I think that's going to be the important thing, whether it's, one of the absolute top clubs or a club that's, pushing for European places in the Premier League, whatever it is. You've got to understand what you're getting and how he's going to fit in. I think Jonathan David is world class when it comes to his intelligence and his instincts. Coaches he's had have talked about this a lot. What he's not is a physical beast who's going to dominate centre backs, or someone who's, absolutely electric quick and is going to beat players one-on-one on the wing. Like, if you're expecting that kind of forward play, you're going to be disappointed. You need to find a place for a player who's smart, who tactically will do everything you want them to do, who is a fantastic finisher, has great instincts around the box. Those are all things I think he can do at a very high level anyway.
Well, and you kind of just said it earlier as well. The key is you want to see him play. And we kind of have Canadian players who are in both categories, making a big move that we get all excited about and don't play. First, the player that came about with was Richie Larea. But then you also have players who do move on and they do end up playing, and it's great. I mean, Alphonso Davies, I think, is just in a category of his own. But even what Alistair Johnston has been able to do, you just look at some of these other players. But Tajon Buchanan right now, guys, is falling on the side of not playing. And this is not good for the player himself, and obviously not good for the national team either, when you want that wing back who has such talent and such hope and such promise, and I don't even think has reached his ceiling, you want to see him play. And right now it's been rumored by Sky Sports Italia, they're reporting that Torino is actually interested in signing Tajon Buchanan from Inter Milan during this actual January transfer window. And we know that he joined Inter Milan last summer, has made just one start. He's struggling to stake a claim for himself there into that lineup, guys. We know he had a broken leg situation. So that's obviously been very tough to come back from. But there's still some other factors there. And I'm wondering, Wheels, if you just feel like making a move to another team is exactly what he needs to get playing time.
Yeah, he does. Look, it's been a difficult past 18 months for Tajon Buchanan since making that move, over 2 years now. I mean, breaking his leg in the summer certainly didn't help matters. But the decision to leave Bruges might have been a little bit premature. If you watch Club Bruges now, they are a very good club, and they're playing European football. And there's some really talented players there. That seemed to be a good level for Tajon Buchanan. He took a massive step forward joining a club like Inter Milan. And again, when Inter Milan come knocking, if they want you to join their club, it's very difficult to say no. But for me, they've a top 5 club squad in European football right now. They're a contender in every competition that they play in. And he has some very talented players in front of him, including Denzel Dumfries, who was rumored to be on his way out, but continues to produce for Inter. The unfortunate thing for Tajon is even when Dumfries comes out of the game, they move around different players, whether it's Matteo Darmian, they mix and match the other players, and Buchanan just simply hasn't been preferred. I mean, 61 minutes of Serie A football is nowhere near enough. All eyes have to be on 2026. Even when players are deciding, Canadian players are deciding what to do with their club careers, they want to make sure for a home World Cup that they're in a position to be at their absolute best. This is paramount for Tajon Buchanan, Ismail Kone. Go down the list of Canadian players who simply need to play and be on the field right now. And not just play, but play in a system that suits their strengths. That's why it's not just move to any club, end of story, just get the hell out of there. It's not that. It's like go to a club where you're going to play and it's going to play to your strengths. That's when a club like Torino comes about. I'm like, okay, that might actually make a little bit of sense because they use wide players. They play some sort of variation of a 4-4-2 where he can play down that right-hand side, maybe in a little bit more of an attack-minded role, which I think suits them to the ground. They've only lost one Torino in their last 7 games. They've drawn Juventus and Fiorentina over the course of that process, but they need a little bit more to get over the hump and drag them out of a relegation battle. So I think that's the type of move that would work, even if it is short-term for the rest of the season. Then in the summer, evaluate your options and hit the ground running. It might affect Canada and what they're able to do this summer in the Gold Cup, but Tajon needs to make sure that over the next 16, 18 months ahead of the World Cup in 2026, he's putting himself in the best position to succeed. If not, he and Canada will be much worse off for it.
And every athlete deals with this, right? Like you have to, when you're making a move, you have to look at a club situation to see where you fit. And it may not be a big name, Ollie club, but if you're going to another club where you feel like you will get significant minutes, maybe, you're just kind of guaranteed that starter role, you take it a little bit. And I'm not going to pretend to be a psychologist by any means, but I think we
Please
can,
do.
Okay, well, let me put where are my glasses here? I got to look smart. But we know that the Canadian men on the national side of things have done extraordinary things, have deserved to be where they are on the global map right now, and they've moved up in rankings. And we also know with that has come the recognition from teams overseas in them, and then the ability to move. And you can sometimes get caught up in that hoopla of, look, Canadian players are being coveted. And yes, it is a big deal to move on, to get out of Dodge, so to say. And sometimes you can get caught, and I love this word, I used it in our pre-show meeting, I'm going to use it again. Sometimes you can get caught up in the hoopla of, I'm going to go play in Europe. I'm going to go play in this certain league. I'm going to go play with this certain team. And then next thing you know, you're just a practice player, right? And I feel like right now we're kind of at that crossroads where the Canadian players now have to make the right decisions for them. It's all nice and dandy, you're being coveted, but what's the right move for you? right? Like, and and again, I know I'll bring it back down here to Tajon Buchanan, but this is also a pretty big decision for him to make because he's got to be playing, Ollie.
Yeah, but like when you're playing in the Belgian league and Inter come calling, like what is he supposed to do? You know, like I wouldn't be so much like revisiting whether that was the right decision for him or not. I think it was a massive opportunity and you have to take it, and it might not work out, and that's okay. And he did it at a time where, you know, you're still a few years out from the next World Cup, you know, if we're thinking about it on international terms, and you have time to kind of work your way up to that, whether it's at Inter or elsewhere. We also have to say that, like, as much as I think it was always going to be a massive task for him to break into the Inter side, to hold down a place in the first team, as it is for anyone who goes to that type of club, he also broke his leg, right? Like that didn't help. And you come in the January transfer window, it's tough to settle, tough to get into the team. And then you see your first full preseason with your new club blown out by an injury at a summer tournament, a major injury at a summer tournament. So it's been really difficult for him. Excuse me. If I'm him now, I'm just thinking about the next 6 months and not beyond that. Like, go out on loan, get some minutes, get yourself back on the pitch, get some confidence and rhythm back, and then go from there. And you've got a year to build up to 2026.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we're going to be
think about how important he was for Canada during World Cup qualifying. Like,
massive. He was the best player at the World Cup.
That's what I'm saying here. And really, under Jesse Marsch, Buchanan just hasn't been available, or he's kind of being pushed to the periphery. That's why if he gets this back on track, you have a right side of the field of Alistair Johnston and Tajon Buchanan locked and loaded. Then you have Davies and Schaffelberg, whoever down the left. Like, all this, you're looking at this team saying, wow, this could be pretty special. That's why it seems like Buchanan might be a little bit of the missing link right now. If he can return to form, wow, look out. And hopefully sooner rather than later.
Well, that's why I said we're going to be, throughout our shows, keeping an eye on Canadian players, because in particular, the middle of the park there with even Ishmael Kone and his playing time, that stuff we're going to focus on, and Liam Fraser dealing with that ACL, and he'll have to make a comeback from there. There's a lot that we're going to get into. So right now, with Torino being rumored to be interested in Tajon Buchanan, it would be nice if you can go somewhere, get some play minutes, and just sometimes get your confidence back, right? Because even though obviously your talent, your skill is still there, but man, you can take a shot to your confidence, and that alone can be very debilitating, and you don't want that to set in with any player. All right, let's make our way to Canadian soil in the Canadian Premier League, and Daniel Nimick's move to Forge is official. Fans on the East Coast, guys, not happy. They're calling Nimick a villain. What is happening here? How dare you move to Forge, the big bad wolves, Forge?
Turncoat.
A turncoat. That is like using an
Benedict
old school term.
Nimick.
We've had hoopla and turncoat in the show today.
You know what? This is a show where you can come here to expand your vocabulary and knowledge in many ways other than just soccer. All right, Wheels, should he be considered a villain? Is he big, bad, and scary right now?
Hoopla and turncoat. I'm going to throw Rubes in, and this would be the top-rated show of 1923. Should he be considered a villain? Absolutely. But a couple things go into this. One, I think it's a good thing that Nimick is a turncoat or a villain or whatever you want to call him, because two things matter when you're associating that. The player has to be good, so you have to care about him enough that you're going to throw those labels his way. And the fan base has to be passionate about it as well, which Halifax fans are outstanding. They're going to care when one of their top players and top leaders from the past 2 seasons ends up packing up to go to the evil empire in Forge. Like, this is a good thing. And I don't think Dan Nimick cares, really. I think when it gets down to it, what maybe adds to this a little bit, from my understanding, maybe Oliver can weigh in on this as well. I think it was assumed in Halifax that Nimick was going to move on, but he was going to move outside of the Canadian Premier League. So the fact that he goes and lands in Forge, that kind of stings a little bit more to the Wanderers faithful. Now for Nimick, he leaves and goes to Forge for good reason. That's why I don't think he cares, because it's a club that has done a nice job in putting his players into position to win, context to show how good they are, and then allowing those players to move on thereafter. They're playing in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. They're going to be competing in every tournament that they play in this summer as well. So for Nimick, the move makes sense, and I don't think that he cares. But I think that all of this, we need more of this with all this within the league movement that's going on here. Mm-hmm. And when the fan base cares and the players are good enough, then you're going to get these villain type characters in the league. So I say bring it on, Nimick, Daniel Nimick, the villain. I love the sounds of it. Let's go.
You have to come up with a nickname. You're good at that, Wheels. Come up with something for Nimick. How are you feeling about it, Ollie?
I think he's joined a bigger club. Does that make him a villain? I don't know. Like, everyone knows I think I have a soft spot for the Wanderers, but there's been 2 teams in this league since the beginning that have been consistently competing for trophies, have been playing continental football, moving players on to higher levels. I don't blame any player in this league right now for wanting to play for one of those clubs, Forge or Cavalry. So, look, it's up to Halifax, I think, to change that narrative. We have a more level playing field in this league than most, so it's not necessarily set in stone who the big clubs are. It can change over time. But right now, the biggest teams, the most successful teams in this league with the best track record have been Forge and Cavalry, and I don't blame players for wanting to go and play for them.
Well, just like last year, we talked a lot about Atletico Ottawa, and they made all these moves in the offseason, and we called them the super team heading in just because of the big splash, big names. And now Forge with Nimick and Brian Wright. You know where I'm going with this. There are also reports indicating that soon they will be adding Rezat Rama and Mo Babouli. So if they do, in fact, do that, or maybe with the moves they've already made, I don't know if you're prepared to call Forge a super team.
Me?
Yeah.
I mean, I find this funny. Like, do you need us to call Forge a super team? Like, they've won 4 titles in 6 years. They already are a super team. Like, I wasn't the one personally who was calling Ottawa a super team last year anyway. I thought they were very good and had a great window, but I wouldn't have gone as far as super team. But Forge, like, they've been a super team every year. So if you want to call them that this year, then sure, go ahead. I would also say that, like, I think it's being a little bit kind of overstated the extent to which, they're doing business right now. They've basically replaced players so far. Like Campbell and
a lot of
Hamilton
exited.
Yeah, like Brian Wright's come in, 2 strikers have gone out, Badamanga's on the way out, Babouli's come in, Methuselah's gone, Nimick's come in. Maybe even you could say he's a replacement for Jabrapor in a roundabout way if Jonsson goes back into midfield. They've lost Duncan. They're probably, I think, going to lose Daniel Power as well, it looks like. So there's more still to replace. So I wouldn't even go as far as to say that they're like, massively stronger than they were last year yet, even though they've brought in, obviously, some high-profile players.
Yeah.
I think it's the intermoves that you've been talking about, Wheels, right? Like, it's the fact that these players are becoming well-known now, and now they're moving within the league. So it's a big deal.
Thanks to Eddie for the message. I love this kind of banter. Like Ollie, I was not on the super team train. I think the One Soccer admin got a little excited because the hope was when you throw all these really good players together that something was going to come together in Ottawa. For me, to Oliver's point, this is business as usual for Forge. Good players go out or players that might not fit, and they bring in like for likes or players that might be able to play in a little bit of a different way and take this project forward. They have been a super team really since day number 1. The hope is that other teams show that same wherewithal. They actually come together with some superpowers in order to, throw some kryptonite their way. But that simply just hasn't been the case. It's been Cavalry. It's been Forge. And by the way, I hope that Canadian Premier League fans take notice of this stuff. Like, we, the media, get these press releases all the time when players go and sign for teams. It's like, Pacific FC sign so-and-so, midfielder blank. This press release with Dan Nimick says Forge FC signed star Canadian Premier League defender Daniel Nimick. Like, they're thrown in your face. Like, we are getting all the best players here in Hamilton. The rest of you in the Canadian Premier League, you can just deal with it. I think that more fans across this league should be up in arms. You're like, you know what? You can take whatever. We're going to be okay. Just I want to see more of that angst, that hostility between fans and clubs, and that's what creates a really good breeding ground for atmosphere and environment across the Canadian Premier League. So we'll see if it didn't work out in Ottawa. We'll see if this is a super version of Forge, or a star player like Nimick still has something to prove this year, and some good defenders are signing elsewhere. So
had a tough year.
And that's the point, right? It's the interleague moves. Because again, these players now have made names for themselves within the league. And I'm not saying you still don't get excited when you sign a player from elsewhere and they come on in. You're like, oh, okay. But when you sign players, when they're making moves within the league, they've created a fan base elsewhere. They've created, like, there's a loyalty elsewhere. And now they move. And this is the kind of drama you want in the league. Now, of course, we have yet to see a real big, like, could you imagine if Tristan Borges is like, I don't know, I'm just going to go on over to Cavalry now. That to me, blow the top off the roof. That's what we're missing, that kind of move. Like, that would be insane. Carducci suddenly is like, yeah, I'll come be your goalkeeper in Forge. Like, that would be lunacy to me. But I do think it's starting. Like, we're starting to see guys who have made a name for themselves in the CPO, and now they're moving. And it's like, whoa, wait a second. What's happening here, right?
That move, that crazy move would be Warshevsky to Forge. I mean, that would just do it, right? That would be the one. It's not happening. Like, if Brian Wright, by the way, if we're going to talk villains, Brian Wright has gone down the highway from York to Forge. Like, true. That is, you know, that fits the bill as villain as well, but I'm just not hearing it from the York fan base. So there's been a lot of that, and it started with Jabrapor and Campbell from Pacific to Forge. And do you know who cares? Even if some of the fans don't care, the players care. I'm telling you, you talk to players around this league, they have these bonds, they have these associations, affiliations, these shared experiences with their teammates. And when they go on to join a rival, they care. And that's something to look forward to on the field. If the fans don't, the players, they remember. So Halifax, Forge this season, I'm looking forward to it already.
Not that we're trying to point the finger at Brian Wright, but you make a valid point. He's gone from York to Hamilton.
And Babouli's bouncing back and forth.
And it's like,
what's Babouli doing here? Bouncing around down the 403.
I love it all. I love it, and I love it all. All right, guys, let's get to our Tony Bet top picks. Europa League action on Thursday. That's going to be our focus on today's Tony Bet top picks. Wheels, we're going to start with you. Love doing this.
No.
What play do you like in Manchester United hosting Glasgow Rangers?
Good one.
Well, I'm curious whether Oliver Platt thinks that Manchester United, this is their worst squad, their worst team in club history. Because that's history. Ruben Amorim tried to bring it back a little bit in his press conference today. Yeah, he's right, but they're playing a Scottish side, right? United have to win this game. Give me United on the handicap here. It's a goal and a quarter. I mean, they had a difficult time against Bodo Glimt, but based upon their league form, the Europa League absolutely does matter. It has increased importance for Manchester United. So I'll back United at home against Rangers.
They had a difficult time against Bodo Glimt. That I think is a good summary of where Manchester United.
We're sure you did.
Victoria Pilsen too.
I'm going to give you a pair of 15th place teams right now. So in Bundesliga, you have Hoffenheim hosting Premier League side Tottenham.
My answer would be similar to if you'd given me the United game. I don't know how you back Spurs to do anything right now. So, like, Hoffenheim are having a miserable season as well, and they've been, there's been a little bit of talk around that. But Hoffenheim at home, like, Spurs are just a mess, and I don't know when it gets better until the players start returning.
Every Spurs game, play the over. Play the over. They can't defend. Some talented attackers, play the over.
All right. Keeping an eye on that. And as per usual, we always love teasing Wheels about Manchester United based on the results. So we can't wait
one day
to do that.
One day. Maybe Jonathan David will come to Old Trafford and turn things around, and you can't mock me anymore.
I could do it.
That's the great hope.
That could be a game changer. Villain! Anyways, that's Ollie, Wheels, and Andy. We'll see you next time.